Welcome to this week's Halacha Shir. The Shir is entitled Cutting a Birthday Cake on Shabbos. We normally try and connect it to the Parsha. This is Parshas Pekudei, but really it's just a follow-on from last week's Shir, which was discussing playing Scrabble on Shabbos. And there was a lot to say, and therefore this is a sort of a part two. So Parshas Vayakel was connected to Shabbos. Of course, in the beginning we talk about Shabbos, but it's a very interesting topic. Whether you can cut a birthday cake, how do you cut a decorative cake which says on it happy birthday, happy anniversary, and also writing with food. Can you put sort of letters, H-A-P-P-Y, etc. on the cake? Can you do that on Shabbos? Can you fashion letters out of food on Shabbos? These sort of things we'll address. Now, let's just have a very quick reminder of the background halachas of writing on Shabbos. And I know I mentioned this in the Scrabble share, but just to review it very quickly. The Gemara in Shabbos, Ein Gimel, lists the 39 melachas, the Mishnah there. Avos melachas aboim chosa achas, hazoreh achorish hakotzer, hakosev hamochek. Kosev and mochek are two of the 39 melachas. And Rashi says over there, and if you're listening online, you want to have the sheet, you're welcome to email me, j.golker@gmail.com. I'll send you the handout. Rashi says there in Shabbos, Ein Gimel, Mefarish l'mami boy leMishkan, where would you have writing and erasing in the Mishkan? So the answer is that Shekin Reish Min al Kroshi HaMishkan Leida Eze Ben Zugay for Kaisev Ois Bezu V'Ois Bezu in the Kroshim in the Mishkan, which we know is the prototype of the whole world, the creation, constructive type of building. That the 39 melachas feature there. Where does writing and erasing feature? On the kroshim. When they would put the beams up for the Mishkan, they need to know which beam to put next to which one. And therefore there would be like a little sign, there would be like a number system, you would write aleph, base, or whatever on the actual kroshim, so you'd know where to put them. And sometimes you'd write something, so there's your writing, but sometimes you would make a mistake and you have to erase it. So you have kosev and moichek there in the Mishkan. Now, the Mishnah in Shabbos Daf Kufdalad Omid Beis, sets out some of the rules regarding writing. Hakosev shtei oisos behelem echad chayev, kosev b'dyo b'sam b'zikra, of a choldov shel roshim chayev. That writing has, for it to be awesome in HaTorah, it has to be a permanent type of writing, and it has to have two letters. Kosev b'mashkin, but if you write with liquid, b'mei peres with fruit juice, b'avak drochim with das, b'avak sofrim, etc., of a chol dov she'enim iskayim, potter. If you write in a temporary fashion with sand on the seashore or something like that, or other types of temporary writing, then that is a drabanon. And the Shulchan Aruch extends and gives you another example. He says in Siman Shin Mem Sif Dalet, Yesh li zohesh lelichtav be'etzbo b'mashkan al shulchan be'efer. Sometimes you have a cold bottle of Coke, you bring it out of the fridge, and it's very cold, and there's condensation, and you want to write on the bottle. That is an Issa D'Rabbanan of Ksiv on Shabbos, or on a steamy window where there's condensation. That would be a problem with D'Rabbanan. Avol Mutza, says the Shulchan Aruch, lirshem ba'avir k'min oisius. But if you want to just write in the air like this, you just want to write, A or B or whatever it is in the air, then that is not a problem. That's nothing. So what emerges is that, and again from the Mishnah Berurah on that Shulchan Aruch, what emerges are a few rules. Number one, writing any letter or number or picture or any meaningful symbol is prohibited. This applies to, and min HaTorah it would be also if you write two letters in a permanent fashion, i.e. with ink on paper or something like that. If you write in a temporary fashion, which is not, the writing is not going to last, for example, you write on the sand or on the condensation of a bottle or a window, that is also midrabanan. And if you merely write on in the air or something which is just nothing, then that is actually mutter. The Mishnah Berurah carries on. The Bir Halacha, says Hatzor Tzura Chayav Mishum Kosev, that writing an image, a meaningful symbol, is also caught under the Malacha of Kosev, and therefore the main points that come out of this Sif in Shulchan Aruch is this: writing any letter, number or picture or any meaningful symbol is prohibited, and it applies to, for example, carving fruits or any food item into a meaningful shape. If it's a very simple shape, for example, you have like a melon scooper and you scoop out little balls of melon, or ice cream scooper where it makes it a round thing, that's not a meaningful shape. But if you make a very fancy shape, a boat or a hat or I don't know, something else, that would be problematic. Only lasting writing, ksiva which is miskayem, and ksiva miskayemes is also in the Torah, and Chazal extended this to prohibit temporary writing, as I explained. Now, turning over the page on the handout, what about writing with food? Well, it's forbidden to attach, for example, chocolate letters to a cake, as they become embedded in the cake, and therefore it becomes, even maybe not a permanent fixture, but it could be permanent, but at least a temporary fixture, and therefore you can't attach chocolate letters to a cake. Moreover, it's forbidden to carve or to mold any food into a meaningful shape, and therefore if you want to cut out letters of a person's name from certain types of fruit, that would be problematic as well. And it's also forbidden to write letters with whipped cream. Some poskim completely prohibit spraying whipped cream on Shabbos, not for now, but even those who are matir it, you're not allowed to sort of write letters with the whipped cream. Now, what about cutting decorative cakes? So this is where really the topic for tonight. So the Ramah says in Shin Mem Sif Gimel, which is on paragraph 4 of the handout, the Ramah says, Also, l'shaber uga shekosov aleo kumin oisius. You're not allowed to break a cake which has letters on it, even though you want to eat it, but you're just cutting slices in the cake. By you cutting the cake and destroying letters, that is considered mochek, which is erasing, which is a separate av melacha. And therefore, you can't cut a cake if in doing so you are destroying some writing. Explains the Mishnah Berurah, when does the Ramah say that you can't cut a cake in a way that deforms or ruins the picture or deforms the letters? Only when the letters are made of a separate item. But if the writing is from the cake itself, because it's not called writing. So for example, there are some biscuits, which here in the UK, maybe they've got them at other places, I think they used to be called nice biscuits, and on the top of it, it had the letters NICE, but it is made out of the cookie itself. So I guess it was some sort of mold where you put the batter or whatever it was in the actual mold and you bake it there. The actual shape of the biscuit says the lettering. So eating that or breaking that is not a problem, because the Mishnah Berurah explains dafka when the Ramah says is asa is when you've got a cake and you've got some icing on top which spells happy birthday. But if the writing itself is just part of the cake, is part of the mold, or however, shari de'ein shem ksiva leha, memele lo shaykh b'zeh mechika, and therefore that's not considered mechika. V'chein im kosav ha'osis b'dvash ha'ma'urav b'mayim, or shamet peres, gam kem ein lahachme, that if it's literally in the cake itself, it's embedded within it, that's not considered a separate entity, and therefore it's not mochik. And furthermore, in Sivkot and Yud Zayin, there the Mishnah Berurah says, Ta'avim mochik, v'after ein almanas lichtov, for it to be proper midoraisa mochika, that Yasmin Torah, it needs to be a mechika, which is almanas lichtov. Because again, where do we learn it from? We learn it from the Mishkan, that maybe the person wrote the wrong number on the beam, so he'll erase it and then write the new number. You're erasing in order to clean up the area so that you can write again. It's mechik almanas lichtov. And when you're cutting a cake, it's not almanas lichtov. You're not writing a new thing. You're not sort of writing happy anniversary instead of happy birthday. Nevertheless, isur drabonon. Miu. It is, however, also midrabanan. Miu ikka. Va'af she'enu mechaven limchik p'sikreishu. Va'asa af midrabanan. Therefore, will be an issa midrabanan. Va'ayim b'sefer dogel mervava. She'mitzaded lahakal b'ikad din hazeh ve'eviu b'shat l'shuvas v'yeshlich me'olav k'she'en sheva m'mokim oisius b'yod rak b'fiv derech achila. Since the dogel mervava says that you can be mekel mi'ikad din, then and also it's brought in the Shari Tshuva, you can be somech on that, and therefore if you're eating the cake, that's derech achila, that would not be a problem. So for example, if I've got the H of the happy birthday in my slice, and that's what I've got, and I want to eat it, then I can eat it. It's not called breaking it in my mouth. The breaking it would be if I take a knife and I cut up the cake and I, instead of saying happy birthday, I sort of divide it up. That would be a problem. So, and just one more note of the Shabbos home, and then I'll summarize the key take-home points. When the Magen Avraham is of the opinion that when it's one drabonon, a psik reisha would be okay, where it's an inevitable consequence of your action, it would be okay. Mikol malkum kana cheres. Here is different. To have a psik reisha betlas drabonon. It's a psik reisha in 3 drabonons. Number 1, mekalkel, i.e., in other words, according to the Magen Avraham, who says there is still psik reisha when it comes to a drabonon, and therefore it should still be osa, and therefore biting into the cake should still be problematic. However, here there are 3 reasons. There are 3 drabonas. Number 1, it's makalkal. You're doing it in a destructive way, which always reduces it from a deraisa to a drabonan. Number 2, you're doing it kilachayat. You're not doing it in the normal fashion by eating it. And number 3, she'ena almanas lichtov. You're not doing it almanas lichtov, like we said, and therefore. And he quotes also the Aruch HaShulchan in Shin Mem Sif Chaf Gimel Sheseva Me'ikadin Ka'adogel Mervava. So therefore, to summarize, number 1, it is forbidden to cut a cake in a way that deforms the letters or ruins the picture. That's number 1. Number 2, it is mutter to cut in between the letters. You're just not allowed to cut the letters themselves. That's mochik. But cutting in between the letters, that would be okay. Another third point, and which is a very useful life hack, Shabbos wise, and that is, if the letters were cut before Shabbos and sort of the pieces of the cake were just left in place, then it's permitted to separate the pieces on Shabbos. So you may want to do that. Say, for example, you've got a birthday cake which says happy birthday on it in icing or in chocolate letters on top, and you just cut the cake, into pieces before Shabbos, and then you put cling film over it, or you just keep it in that position, and it will stay fresh because all the pieces are sort of tightly packed next to each other. And then come Shabbos, you just slide out each piece. That would be fine. Fourthly, it is permitted to bite into a piece of cake that has a complete letter on it, even though the letter will be destroyed. That's really the point that I mentioned from the footnote of the Shabbos home, Simcha Bunim Cohen's wonderful sefer, because it's based, even though the Magen Avraham says that there is a psik reisha still for Isuri Drabonon. Here we've got 3 Isuri Drabonon. You've got Mekalkel, you've got Kilachayad, and it's She'ena Amanas Lichtov, and therefore that would be permitted to eat a piece of cake which has a complete letter on it. And it's also permitted to cut decorations that are not meaningful. So if the cake just has, let's say, like a border, a line, but with no letters or with no picture on it, then cutting a decoration, a straight or a curved line or something like that, that would be permitted. And it's also permitted to cut figures that are baked into the cake or biscuit itself, like the Mishnah Berurah says. So, in summary, just what have we said when it comes to cutting a birthday cake on Shabbos? We've said that that kosev and mochik, writing and erasing, are 2 of the 39 melachas that's mentioned in the Mishnah, brought on Shabbos Ayin Gimel Amud Aleph. Where do you see this in the Mishkan? You see it in the fact they would write on the kroshim, and they would sometimes erase them as well. We differentiate between 3 types of writing. A writing which is lasting, a ksiva miskayemes, is also min Torah, and 2 letters. Chazal extended this prohibition to temporary writing, for example, drawing letters or figures on moist sand or soil, or on condensation, on a foggy window or the outside of a bottle. And there are some type of writing which is actually fine, for example, just writing in the air like that would be no problem. And then when it comes to food, writing with food, it's forbidden to sort of attach chocolate letters to a cake as they become embedded in the cake. That would be problematic. And it's forbidden to carve or mold any food into a meaningful shape. But and also it would be forbidden to write with whipped cream. Even those poskim who are mate whipped cream, they would prohibit writing letters with whipped cream. Regarding cutting decorative cakes, so it's forbidden to cut in a way that it's going to deform a letter or ruin a picture. However, it's mutter to cut between the letters. That's not considered mochik. And if you cut the cake before Shabbos, then just and leave all the pieces in the place, then it's permitted to separate the pieces on Shabbos. It's permitted to bite into a cake that has a complete letter on it, even though the letter will be completely destroyed. If I get the A from the happy birthday and I want to eat that piece of cake, that's not a problem. And it's permitted to cut decorations that are not meaningful. For example, a straight or a curved line, that's not considered significant. And lastly, it's permitted to cut figures that are baked into the cake. So if the whole cake is in the shape of an H and the next piece is an A or something like that, that would not be a problem. It would be permitted to cut figures that are baked into the cake or the biscuit, the cookie itself.